The Carnival of Shadows had a way of calling to you, like a song you couldn't forget but didn't quite remember learning. I first saw it sprawled across the outskirts of town, all glowing lights and beckoning laughter. I was 21, always chasing the next thrill, always hungry for something more. And the carnival? It promised more than I could resist. When I arrived, the air was thick with the scent of popcorn and spun sugar, mingling with an undercurrent of something musky, earthy, almost alive. The lights were brighter than they should have been, the laughter louder and the shadows deeper. That's when I met Marcus. He was standing near a carousel that spun lazily, its horses carved with strange, snarling faces. He was 25, he said, but there was something ageless about him. His smile was sharp, his eyes dark pools that seemed to reflect secrets instead of light. "You look like someone who doesn't scare easily," he said, his voice smooth as silk. "How about a private tour? See the carnival the way it was meant to be seen." Something about him set my skin prickling, but the challenge in his words hooked me. I followed him without hesitation. The first booth we stopped at seemed innocent enough, a simple ring toss. But when I leaned closer, I saw the prizes weren't stuffed animals or cheap toys. They were personal, too personal. A bracelet I'd lost in high school dangled from one of the hooks. Next to it was a book I misplaced as a child, its worn cover as familiar as an old friend. I hesitated. "How did you—" "Go on," Marcus said, grinning. "Win something. Everything here is yours to take." The moment I picked up a ring, the air shifted. The crowd around me seemed to buzz, their faces shadowed despite the carnival's glaring lights. I threw the ring, and it landed perfectly. The bracelet dropped into my hand, its cool metal burning against my skin. "That's yours, isn't it?" Marcus asked, his tone almost mocking. I nodded, but the weight of the bracelet felt wrong, as if it carried something more than just a memory of losing it. "Let's keep going," he said, leading me to the rides. The first was a Ferris wheel. From the ground, it looked normal enough, but as I ascended, I realized the view was wrong. Below me wasn't a carnival, but scenes from my life, moments I buried deep. There was a time I fought with my best friend and stormed off, leaving her in tears. Another scene showed my parents arguing, their voices rising to a crescendo as I hid behind the couch. The crowd below cheered and pointed, their faces indistinct, their eyes hungry. When the ride finally stopped, my legs were shaky, and my chest ached like I'd been hollowed out. "It's just getting started," Marcus said, his smile sharp enough to cut. Each ride after that dug deeper into my memories. A haunted house mirrored the night I'd gotten lost in the woods as a child, the whispers of the trees replaced by the mocking laughter of invisible onlookers. The spinning teacups became a nauseating replay of my first heartbreak, each spin revealing my ex's face twisted with disdain. By the time we reached the last ride, a mirror maze, I was trembling. "Go on," Marcus said, gesturing grandly. "Find yourself." The maze was suffocating. Each mirror showed me a distorted version of myself. Angry, terrified, broken. But it wasn't just me. The reflections moved on their own, stepping out of glass to whisper things I didn't want to hear. "You've always been afraid," one said. "You'll never escape," another hissed. I stumbled through the maze, the walls closing in, the laughter outside growing louder. When I finally burst through the exit, Marcus was waiting. "Congratulations," he said. "You've given the carnival quite the show." "What are you talking about?" I demanded, my voice hoarse. "This carnival runs on emotions," he explained. "Fear, regret, despair, they're our fuel. And you, Rachel, are a feast." I wanted to scream, to run, but my body felt heavy, like I'd left pieces of myself in every ride and booth. "You can leave if you want," Marcus said, his smile almost kind. "But you won't be the same." I turned and ran, the laughter crowd chasing me all the way to the exit. When I finally stumbled out into the cool night air, the carnival was gone, vanished as if it had never been there. But the hollowness inside me remained. Days passed, then weeks, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. My memories were fragmented, pieces of my life stolen by the carnival. I'd look at photos and struggle to recognize the girls smiling back at me. Friends asked if I was okay, and I'd force a smile, but the truth was, I didn't know anymore. The carnival of shadows had taken something from me, something I couldn't name. And every now and then, when the wind carried the faint scent of spun sugar and earth, I'd feel the pull again. Part of me wanted to go back, to find the pieces I'd lost. But I knew better, because the carnival didn't just take, it devoured. The night air was heavy, the city's usual hum reduced to a faint whisper. I stood at the edge of the abandoned subway platform, my phone screen glowing faintly as I reread the cryptic messages. The train only comes at midnight. It'll take you where you never thought possible. The user I matched with was enigmatic, their profile devoid of any pictures or meaningful details. Their name was simply Passenger. Their bold claim had caught my attention, a secret subway line that connects alternate dimensions. At first, I dismissed it as a joke, but the idea gnawed at me like an itch I couldn't scratch. Now, here I was, waiting in a station that had been out of service for years. The second hand on my watch ticked closer to 12. My breath fogged in the cold air, the platform unervingly silent. Then I heard it, the low rumble of wheels against steel tracks. A light flickered down the tunnel, growing brighter as the sound grew louder. The train screeched to a stop, its ancient exterior barely visible under layers of graffiti that writhed and shifted like living things. I hesitated for a moment, staring at the warped letters and symbols that seemed to rearrange themselves when I looked away. My pulse quickened. This is insane. I should turn back. But curiosity has a way of silencing common sense. Before I could think better of it, I stepped aboard. The doors closed behind me with finality that made my stomach lurch. Inside, the air was stale, thick with a scent of mildew and something metallic. The seats were torn and the flickering overhead lights cast an eerie glow. The passengers, if you could call them that, sat eerily still, their faces shrouded in shadow. When I passed them, I noticed their eyes, hollow, dark pits that seemed to drink in the light. "Excuse me," I said, my voice trembling. No one responded. The only sound was the rhythmic clatter of the train, moving deeper into the tunnel. Then a man turned to look at me. His face was familiar, too familiar. It was my face, but gaunt, scarred, and twisted in an expression of anguish. He opened his mouth to speak, but the sound that came out was a garbled, distorted wail. My heart raced, and I stumbled back, clutching the cold metal pole for support. The train screeched to a halt. The doors slid open, revealing a scene outside the window that made my blood run cold. It was a version of the city I knew, but wrong, blistered and decayed. Skyscrapers leaned at impossible angles, their glass facade shattered. The streets were filled with shadows, figures that moved unnaturally fast, darting in and out of the ruins. In the distance, I saw myself again, dirty, ragged, and huddled against the wall, clutching a cardboard sign that read, "Help me." The train lurched forward before I could comprehend what I'd seen. My reflection in the window stared back at me, but it wasn't following my movements. It smiled when I didn't. At the next stop, the scene was even worse. A warped version of my apartment building loomed outside, its walls streaked with rust-colored stains. The air smelled of rot and despair. I saw another version of myself, this time running frantically down the street, pursued by shadowy figures with elongated limbs and glowing eyes. The fugitive version of me stumbled, fell, and was dragged into the darkness. The passengers began to move now, their hollow eyes fixed on me. They murmured incoherent words that sounded like my name distorted through static. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. I reached for the emergency brake, but the lever crumbled into dust under my hand. The train sped faster, the windows showing blurs of light and shadow. I stopped looking outside. Each stop was another twisted version of my life, each more horrifying than the last. A version where I was a murderer, another where I was trapped in a padded cell, screaming at the walls, another where I was nothing more than a decayed corpse. Desperation clawed at my throat. I pulled out my phone, the only anchor to my reality. The signal was gone, of course, but my profile was still open, the chat with Passenger glowing faintly on the screen. A new message appeared. "You shouldn't have boarded." My hands trembled as I typed. How do I get off this train? Their reply came instantly. You can't. It's yours now. The realization hit me like a freight train. The graffiti on the walls wasn't just random scribbles. It was my story, my mistakes, my regrets, written in shifting, alien symbols. This wasn't a train through alternate dimensions. It was a journey through every nightmare I had ever feared, every failure I had ever dreaded. I looked up, and the passengers were gone. The train was empty, but their whispers lingered, echoing through the carriage. The lights flickered and dimmed, leaving me in near darkness. My phone buzzed one last time. A notification. Passenger has updated their profile. I clicked it. The profile picture was now my face, twisted in the same anguished expression I'd seen earlier. The bio read, always looking for new travelers. The train didn't stop again. It sped faster and faster, the windows revealing nothing but endless, suffocating darkness. I knew then that I was no longer Noah, the curious commuter. I was something else, a part of the train itself, just another shadow, waiting for the next fool who couldn't resist the lure of the unknown.